Howdy y'all, it's Ryan. I promised y'all a video on how to check out your smart reports online, as well as to find the Kaplan material to fix your weaknesses. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to the login page on captest.com. Now, I'm sure many of y'all are very familiar with this concept by now. Go ahead, type in your email address and your password, and log in. Alright, now that you're on your Kaplan syllabus, make your way to the full length that you want to cover. So I have full length 3 pulled up. This is just an example exam from a different account. And I want to show you how you can analyze your results. First off, when you get to your smart report, you can see question by question, line by line, passage by passage, what questions you got right and wrong, whether or not you changed it from wrong, perhaps, that's the X to the check, which can also be wrong to wrong, as well as you can have a check to a wrong. That means going from a right answer to a wrong answer. The question topic, whether or not you marked it, and finally how long you spent per question. And this is for each section: physical, verbal, and biological sciences. All right, that's an example of the check to the X. Alright, so that's all well and good. You have your total weighted score. You have some idea where you are right now, but now the real question is, and the real value of smart reports is, where do you go from here? So I'm going to direct you up to the top right corner of the page where you see performance summary. Go ahead and click on performance summary. On the page that appears, you can see physical sciences, verbal reasoning, and biological sciences broken up into their individual subjects. Verbal reasoning obviously is one big subject by itself, so they broke it down by question types. This is pretty good information. This allows you to get a general idea about your strengths and weaknesses on subjects. However, it doesn't really tell you what to study. So my strategy for determining what topics in each subject you should be studying is to go ahead and click on the physics bar. Now you see topics and percentiles within topics that you did on the test. This is where we get to some real good material. For instance, what 3 topics are your weakest topics in physics? What I do is, first off, I don't really take the topics that only have one question, because if you got it right or you got it wrong, one question doesn't really tell you whether or not you're doing well on a subject, or rather a topic. My next thing is to look at the lowest percentiles for any topic that has more than one question in it. For instance, AC/DC circuits. This one is 0 for 2. And if you have 0 for 2, obviously it's a 0 percentile. There are 2 questions. AC/DC circuits are going to definitely be a target for your studying for the next test. One that really catches my eyes down here at Units Kinematics. This is Chapter 1 of Physics. This was Physics 1 material. This is something that should be bread and butter for your tests. Therefore, if you're making a 20th percentile, 1 out of 5, definitely one of your top 3 subjects to cover before you get to your next test. And lastly, the next big one that stands out is nuclear phenomena. 25%, 1 out of 4. So the 3 worst percentiles out of here that have more than one question representing would be your focus for studying physics before your next test. And this is how you go for each subject. You can click back on your performance summary, go to general chemistry, and do the exact same thing. What do you think would be the 3 worst topics here as long as questions were greater than 1? Okay, now there are a few. I would say before my next test, I need to go over bonding, compounds of stoichiometry, and redox and electrochemistry. Now, in all honesty, this student has several more subjects that they need to rebuff themselves on before the next test. But let's try to be reasonable here. Don't try to burn yourself out on studying. You should be spending about 3 to 4 hours per subject. That means that you can't really cover thoroughly more than 3 topics in a day. Alright, now that we've talked about the performance summary, what are you going to do to assess those weaknesses? So let's go back to physics. What were the 3 topics we needed to cover in physics? Alright, One of those is AC/DC circuits, and if it's on your list of things to study, things to focus on, we need to go find material that'll focus on that topic. So click out of your Smart Report, go to your additional resources, and now the fun begins. My first general rule is read the chapter. And now I know that's time consuming, and if it's a recurring topic, maybe reading the chapter over again isn't necessarily worth your time. However, if it's the first time this topic has shown up in your list of things to focus on, you should definitely spend the time to reread the material, especially if you are only skimming through material while you were taking the class. So your review notes are actually online. You can check them out online. There's an iPad app that you can use. Both of those would be great ways to make sure that you are tracking what you have and have not read. Once you finish reading, obviously that's not a test-like mode. That's not questions. That's not necessarily going to test you on your deeper understanding of it. We need to take this to the next level. And the next level, you can click on subject test to get you to this next page, which really lists out everything that you can work on. And my strategy is, rather than trying to look through everything, I click on all items. I go into my search bar and I'll type in circuits. Hey, we have 3 different things that we can use to be sure that we understand this topic. Now the first level will be the workshop. The workshop is going to be taking you through a deeper understanding of the material. It's going to have some flash video of someone talking you through the subject, making sure that you actually understand what's going on. The next level of difficulty is going to be the quizzes. This is going to be called a topical quiz, and it will be a shorter, more brief introduction to a test-like scenario. And then the next level will be electric circuits test. This will be a much more intense type of situation, but only focusing on AC/DC circuits. Now, what if it turns out that as you're taking more and more full lengths, you start to notice that there's not really a set of 3 topics that are really your weakest? Okay, now technically, yes, most likely there will be 3, but what if you're scoring something more than 50% on all of your topics? What should you do now? Because it's not necessarily that it's a deeper understanding and conceptual understanding of the topics that are getting down. But what's most likely happening at this point is that you need more test scenarios. You need more practice at triaging and time management. This is where we're going to get into our subject tests. And for each subject, general chemistry, physics, organic chemistry, and biology, the next level, and this is something that you really won't do until really towards the end when you're running out of material to cover and you're really just focusing on test-taking skills and triaging and strategy, that's going to be section tests. You can go into your search bar, type in section test, and you can pull up all the section tests for each of your subjects. And in this case, it actually includes verbal. Now, I understand many times you don't want to be doing, let's say, a section test every single day. It gets a little bit monotonous. It's perhaps some days it's too time consuming, too much of a commitment. So I'm going to lead you over to the quiz bank. And the quiz bank is rather helpful. The best way to get there is to actually X out of that page and go back to additional resources, scroll down and find QBank. Once you've opened your QBank page, as you can see at the very top, we have time mode versus tutor mode. When we're in our first, let's say, 3 full lengths, when we're preparing for our first 3 full lengths, we're really focusing on tutor mode because it's untimed. We're not as concerned about whether you're great at test taking yet. We want to be sure that you're less stressed about the subject material itself. As you move forward, you'll switch into time mode, and time mode is obviously a real testing type situation. Another benefit to tutor mode is the ability to get explanations. So let's say your 3 worst topics in physics were AC/DC circuits, atomic phenomena, and momentum. You can deselect everything else and only work on those 3 topics in physics. Depending on whether or not you've done this many times before, you can either click on unused or all items in the quiz reuse mode. Let's find out how many questions do we have available in these 3 different topics. Oh, we have 48. My recommendation is to do no more than 20 questions, but really no less than 10 to really be sure that you can have a deeper understanding of the topic. And as you go through the quiz, don't really worry about the time. Make sure you get a good roadmap, and when you get to the question, prove to yourself that the answer is right, and then that every other answer choice is wrong. Prove it to yourself. Double check in the passage. Don't necessarily go into your review notes, but do your very best to prove to yourself that you're right, and click on the explanation and check to see if that's what you should have been doing. Okay? Figure out if you did get it wrong, why was it that you fell for that answer choice? Was it simply that you didn't understand the content? Or was it that you fell for some sort of trick in the answer choice, perhaps an opposite type answer choice? Alright, so that about sums up what you have available to you. There's quiz bank, full length, subject test, section test. There are foundation reviews, which are more basic foundational reviews of, let's say, the power rules and mathematics. And the list goes on what you have available to you. Also, if you would like to have someone talk it through with you, remember that you have your lessons on demand. These lessons on demand are great because you can go back to any lesson that you had, physics 1 through 3, Gen Chem 1 through 3, and so on and so forth. And you can re-watch those sections covering those topics that you needed help with. Now remember, not every lesson covers the topics that you want. For example, I think it was nuclear phenomena, nuclear decay. Nuclear decay we didn't cover in class. However, it was assigned to you as a part of your reading in your work. So going back to the lesson wouldn't necessarily be the best way to be sure you understood that material. There are other sources of practice for that topic in general. So that's the end of this video. I hope it answers some of your questions. There are even more materials in here, but for the sake of not boring you with the video, I'll leave you at that. Thanks.